fall of Israel and Judah. The land of Israel and Judah was a land in strife. The kingdom was not a stable one. The uniting of the 12 tribes of Israel was a fragile unity. Politics, disagreements over worship, pride, land rights, and jealousy plagued the region. Even though during King David of Judah united the tribes into one unified kingdom, there was still strife. This would have been like forcing the modern-day countries that were once a part of the Roman Empire to unite and become one country. We have seen this with the European Union experiment and its strife with Great Britain and its Brexit, and Greece's and Spain's fall into financial hardship. Now after picturing that, now picture this, that almost 3,000 years ago when uniting the tribes of Israel would have seemed like an impossible feat, especially when each tribe has governed themselves for hundreds of years since they migrated east from Egypt during the Exodus. Despite the reign of David's son Solomon saw unrest when one of the king's servants, Jeroboam, rebelled. Jeroboam was on the king's errand when he met the Jewish prophet Ahijah, who told him that God was going to give him authority over 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. According to the Hebrew Bible, God's reason for the division of the kingdom was definitive, because they have forsaken me and have not walked in my ways. However, in the Hebrew text God promised that David's dynasty would continue, albeit over a much smaller kingdom, for the sake of God's covenant with David and for the sake of Jerusalem, God's chosen city. When Solomon learned of the prophecy, he sought to kill Jeroboam, who fled to Egypt for sanctuary. Towards the end of Solomon's reign the kingdom was in decline. Solomon's wisdom and power were not sufficient to prevent the rebellion of several of his border cities. Damascus under Rezin secured its independence of Solomon, and Jeroboam, a superintendent of works, his ambition stirred by the words of the Jewish prophet Ahijah, fled to Egypt. Thus before the death of Solomon the apparently unified kingdom of David began to disintegrate. With Damascus independent and a powerful man of Ephraim, the most prominent of the 10 tribes, awaiting his opportunity, the future of Solomon's kingdom became dubious. After Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam was set to become the next king. Jeroboam returned from Egypt and led a group of people to confront Rehoboam with a demand for a lighter tax burden. When Rehoboam refused the demand, 10 of the tribes rejected Rehoboam and David's dynasty, and Ahijah's prophecy was fulfilled. Only Judah and Benjamin remained loyal to King Rehoboam. The northern tribes crowned Jeroboam as their king. Rehoboam made plans to mount an assault on the rebel tribes, but according to the Hebrew Bible, the Lord prevented him from taking that action. Meanwhile, Jeroboam further consolidated his power by instituting a form of calf worship unique to his kingdom and declaring that pilgrimages to Jerusalem were unnecessary. Thus, the people of the northern tribes would have no contact with the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. The next 100 years of decline were marked by constant civil war and animosity between the kingdom of Israel and Judah. Israel was assimilated into the Assyrian Empire not long after the Israeli and Judean Civil War. Despite losing their main rival Israel to the Assyrians, Judah would continue to decline for the next few hundred years due to the poor decisions made by the rulers of the time, which would cause the kingdom to become a vassal to the Assyrians for a time, until at least Assyria's inevitable decline from internal strife, defiance of vassal states and Egypt's independence. When Josiah became king of Judah in 640 BC, the international situation was in a state of chaotic flux. To the east, the Neo-Assyrian Empire was beginning to disintegrate. The Cimmerians and the Scythians were constantly harassing the Assyrians from the north, and Egypt, now independent to the west, recovered from Assyrian rule and gained power fast. Psamtik, the pharaoh of Egypt before the time of Necho II, managed to both unite all of Egypt and free her from Assyrian control within the first 10 years of his reign. In this power vacuum, Judah was able to govern itself for the time being without foreign intervention. Assyria, weakened by internal strife and ineffectual rule, was unable to resist the Babylonians and the Medes, who united to sack the Assyrian capital of Nineveh in 612 BC. Following a prolonged siege at the Battle of Nineveh, Nabopolassar took control of the city. Ashurbanipal II was a member of the Assyrian royal family and a Tartan, which is the modern equivalent to a general in the army. He became king after Sinsharish Khan, who may have been his brother, and who probably died during the fall of Nineveh. But in around 610 BC, Necho II of Egypt was the son of Psammetichus I by his great royal wife Metensket. His prenomen or royal name Wayamibri means carrying out the heart. Upon his ascension, Necho was faced with the chaos created by the raids of the Cimmerians and the Scythians, who had not only ravaged Asia west of the Euphrates, but had also helped the rising Babylonians shatter the Assyrian Empire. That once mighty empire was now reduced to the troops, officials, and nobles who had gathered around a general holding out at Haran, who had taken the throne name of Ashurbanipal II. Necho attempted to assist this remnant immediately upon his coronation, but the force he sent proved to be too small, and the combined armies were forced to retreat west across the Euphrates. But in the spring of 609 BC Necho, then, stopped work on the canal and turned to war. Necho personally led a sizable force to help the Assyrians. At the head of a large army, consisting mainly of his mercenaries, some of his triremes were constructed by the Northern Sea, and some in the Red Sea, by the coast of the Sea of Erythraeus. The windlasses for beaching the ships can still be seen. He deployed these ships as needed, while he also engaged in a pitched battle at Magdalos with the Syrians, and conquered them, and after this he took Caditis, which is a great city of Syria. He sent the clothes he had worn in these battles to Branchidi of Miletus and dedicated them. Necho took the coast route via Maris into Syria, supported by his Mediterranean fleet along the shore, and proceeded through the low tracts of Philistia and Sharon. He prepared to cross the ridge of hills which shuts in on the south the great Jezreel Valley. Further to the east, Nebuchadnezzar was a man who had a lot of ambition and expansive plans for his new Babylonian kingdom. Like his father before him, he dreamed of conquest and vast rule. He saw the lands of the west as militaristically weakened, but fertile, filled with potential slaves, subjects, riches. An area ripe for conquest. He was envious of his neighbors to the west. The Scythians, Parthians, and the Medes would form a military coalition with Nebuchadnezzar to lay claim to the spoils of war. When the Assyrian capital Nineveh was overrun by the Medes, Scythians, Babylonians and their allies in 612 BC, the Assyrians moved their capital to Haran. When Haran was captured by the alliance in 609 BC, the capital was once again moved, this time to Carchemish, on the Euphrates River. Egypt was allied with the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal II, and marched in 609 BC to his aid against the Babylonians. The kingdom of Judah, who wished to remain independent and sovereign, didn't want to lose their kingdom to any of the warring empires of the period, so they played both sides against the middle, which inevitably became their downfall. Necho continued to march through the Levant, helping that the Judeans would let him through unhindered, thinking they were at peace with his empire, but here in the Jezreel Valley he found his passage blocked by the Judean army. The Egyptian army of Pharaoh Necho II was delayed at Megiddo by the forces of King Josiah of Judah. Their king, Josiah, sided with the Babylonians because he saw the large Egyptian army a threat to his kingdom and was afraid once the Egyptian force defeated the Babylonians that the Judeans would be next on Necho's agenda to conquer. Josiah remembered the words of the Torah and took the meaning "a sword shall not pass through your land" literally. When Josiah had set the temple in order, Necho king of Egypt came up to make war at Carchemish on the Euphrates, and Josiah went out to engage him and attempted to block Necho's advance at Megiddo. But Necho sent messengers to him, saying, "What have we to do with each other, O king of Judah? I am not coming against you today but against the house with which I am at war." and God has ordered me to hurry. Stop for your own sake from interfering with God who is with me, so that he will not destroy you." However, Josiah would not turn away from him, but disguised himself in order to make war with him, nor did he listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of God, but came to make war on the plain of Megiddo. The archers shot King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am badly wounded." So his servants took him out of the chariot and carried him in the second chariot which he had, and brought him to Jerusalem, where he died and was buried in the tombs of his fathers. Josiah was killed, and his army was defeated. The dead body of Josiah was delivered to Jerusalem immediately and buried according to the customs of Judah's kings, near the grave of King David. The Egyptians and Assyrians together crossed the Euphrates and laid siege to Haran, which they failed to retake. They then retreated to northwestern Assyria, in what is today northeastern Syria. The year of struggle for the allies of Babylon came when the kingdom of Lydia, which lies in the western region of Anatolia, and the Scythians coupled with the plague brought an end to the Cimmerians, and the Mede managed to push the Scythians back towards the Caucasus and the Black Sea. After the defeat of the Cimmerians and Scythians, previous allies in the defeat of Assyria, Nebuchadnezzar's expeditions were directed westward. The powerful Median Empire lay to the north. Nebuchadnezzar's political marriage to Amytis of Media, the daughter of the Median king, had ensured peace between the two empires. In 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, marched onto the Assyrian city of Carchemish. There at the city was the combined forces of Egypt and Assyria. The siege was cruel and bloodily intense. Wave after wave of Nebuchadnezzar's war machine forced the Assyrian line to crumble. This setback made it difficult for the Egyptians to hold the ground, and so due to the collapse of what was left of the Assyrian army, Necho, looking in disbelief, retreated and retired back to Egypt to prepare his people for Nebuchadnezzar's invasion. After Nebuchadnezzar defeated Pharaoh Necho at the Battle of Carchemish, he marched his forces to the land of Judah. To avoid the destruction of Jerusalem, King Jehoiakim of Judah, in his third year, changed allegiances from Egypt to Babylon. He paid tribute from the treasury in Jerusalem, some temple artifacts and some of the royal family and nobility as hostages. In 601 BC, during the fourth year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar unsuccessfully attempted to invade Egypt, but Necho repelled the enemy and continued to promote anti-Babylonian coalitions in Syria and Palestine. Herodotus also reports that Necho sent an expedition to circumnavigate Africa. His navigators apparently accomplished the feat, for they reported that, after a certain point in their voyage, the sun lay to their right, that is, northward, as they sailed around southern Africa. The failure led to numerous rebellions among the states of the Levant which owed allegiance to Babylon, including Judah, where King Jehoiakim stopped paying tribute to Nebuchadnezzar and took a pro-Egyptian position. Nebuchadnezzar soon dealt with these rebellions. In the seventh year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, 598 BC, the king of Babylon assembled his army, and after he had invaded the land of Hatti, which is southwestern Syria today, and he in turn laid siege to Jerusalem, which eventually fell in March 597 BC. Jehoiakim died during the siege, possibly in December 598 BC. Nebuchadnezzar pillaged the city and its temple, and the new king Jeconiah, who was either 8 or 18, and his court and other prominent citizens and craftsmen, and much of the Jewish population of Judah, numbering about 10,000, were deported to Babylon. The deportation occurred in 597 BC, a biblical text reports. None remained except the poorest people of the land. Also, taken to Babylon were the treasures and furnishings of the temple, including golden vessels that were once dedicated by King Solomon. The first deportation is the start of the Jewish diaspora, or exile. Nebuchadnezzar installed Jeconiah's uncle, Zedekiah, as puppet king of Judah, and Jeconiah was compelled to remain in Babylon. Nearly 100 years would pass when the Jews would be allowed to return to the land of their forefathers by Persian frontman Cyrus the Great. However, it won't be until 200 years before the birth of Christ that Israel would have ruled during the Hasmonean dynasty. The fall of Israel and Judah is considered by modern scholars to be caused by the tribes unable to agree on political, religious, and civil matters. Much like most modern countries today, including the United States. If the United States can't settle its difference of politics, religion, and civil matters, then it could be assumed that the United States could suffer the same fate as Israel and Judah of the 7th century BC, and the Union could cease to be. Stay tuned for more history documentaries and don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel Iron Tusk 341.